Hey besties, welcome to part 2 of this interview series where I take you through the questions asked in my job interview as a newly qualified social worker. I just came back from a job interview. I literally did. And I said, let me not forget. So let me highlight the questions and tell you the likely answers. By the way, I'm on Operation Get as many job offers as possible. Then I would make the choice. So I will go for a lot of interviews. Now, this team is in adult social care and individuals have physical, mental, and even intellectual disabilities. So the first question they asked me was, how would you as a social worker manage risk whilst promoting someone's independence? Now, when they ask you this kind of question, they want to hear things like risk assessment, risk management, collaboration, reviewing risk, having safeguarding plan, section 42 inquiries. Now, by the way, I'm not going to be going into in-depth details about the answers because I believe if you are watching me, you are most likely a social worker, and once I highlight these things, you already know what I'm talking about. So that's an aspect of this question. And for this question, they're asking about risk management and how you would promote independence. So you are expected to talk about things like empowerment, ensuring that you empower clients to make their own decisions, encourage them to have that freedom of choice and autonomy. So in this question, I gave an instance of a client that has a physical disability, and because of that, she could not do things she enjoyed doing. So she enjoyed cooking, but she could not properly cook because of the physical issues. So I collaborated with an occupational therapist and we're able to explore methods and plans to ensure that risk will be mitigated and her independence promoted. The outcome of that plan was the employment of a care worker that would assist her while she's doing those daily tasks. So they were just nodding their heads. Even though for this question, I feel like I was quite strangely nervous. And I say strangely because I'm not, well, sometimes I get nervous, but I don't know, I was just strangely nervous. And I think it's because the first interview I had with another organization, they asked a lot of like strong questions. And I was expecting this one to be like that, but this one was quite easy. Like I prepared a lot, and the things they asked me were like things I already knew. So I feel like in this question, I answered it very well, but I could have done better. I even know that. So my bestie, see, when you get to the interview, try your best, calm your nerves down before the interview. Calm down. I'm sharing this with you to tell you that, see, I'm not superhuman. There are some times that I actually get nervous, but I'm able to just, calm down. But I think this was a good introduction into my interview process because for the following questions I was more calm and I just knew what to say. Hey besties, I'm currently editing this video. Now for this first question, I want to add some things so that when you answer the question, in case it comes out in your interview, your answer would be more structured. So when they ask you about risk management and promoting independence, you're going to first start with risk management. Now in your risk management plan, you're going to be risk assessing. Your risk assessment is you considering the social, physical, emotional, and various other factors that may pose as a risk to the client, and also you noting the risk by them. So in this risk assessment, it's not just about the risk that others can do to them, also noting the risk they can do to others. You would also talk about collaboration. You're going to be collaborating with the individual, their families, other professionals to ensure that this individual is safeguarded. So in that regard, you're going to be developing a risk management plan that would be reviewed and monitored. So that's the crux of whatever you're saying in terms of risk management. Now, that's not all in this question because it's not just about risk, and it's important that in the interview you make them know that when it comes to risk management, your job is not to just make the individual not have their own autonomy. So you have to still promote their independence while safeguarding them. For instance, if you see the example I gave, even though this person had mobility issues, I did not just say, okay, because you may be at risk, then don't cook. No, I still looked for a way to promote their independence. Talking about promoting independence, you talk about empowerment, that you empower the individual to make their own choices because they are experts in their own lives and they are well placed to judge their own well-being. Not only that, you're also going to be drawing from their support networks. So if there are any loved ones, maybe family members, friends, that this individual actually cares about, you are going to be drawing from that support and encouraging the individual to build such relationships, because the fact that you are promoting independence does not mean they are going to be self-sufficient. You are also promoting other people being in community with them. Now, not only that, in terms of promoting independence, you also talk about the fact that You're going to be supporting them from a strength based approach. And that means dwelling on the things they can do themselves as opposed to just focusing on their limitations. Because it's quite normal that when a person has some vulnerabilities, they are already deficit focused. So they're already focused on what they cannot do. And it's your job as a social worker to also build on their strengths, because that will give them hope and build more resilience in them. Not only that, you would also be encouraging gradual positive risk taking. Now, when you hear risk, you may think it's always a negative thing. No, risk management does not mean you would shield your clients so that they make no mistake or don't even live their lives. No. So you make your interviewer understand that you are still going to be encouraging them to take positive risks. So I think that's a more structured way to answer this first question. Now the second question was, how would you explain Mental Capacity Act to a mom and dad that have no understanding of the act? For this question, I just want to test whether you know what the MCA is all about. I talked about MCA as an act promoting decision making and independence of people. I talked about the 5 principles of the MCA, such as there's a presumption that everyone has capacity to make their own decisions, the fact that every practicable step should be taken to ensure that an individual makes their own decision. Number 3, the fact that a person makes an unwise decision, that does not mean they lack capacity. Also, when it's established that a person lacks capacity, the decision made should be made in their best interest. Then I highlighted the best interest checklist from the CARE Act. And I talked about the fact that whatever decision you are making, you should use the least restrictive measure. They were just studying their heads. I said a lot. I gave an example from my practice, and I talked about the 2-stage capacity test. The first stage being that this individual is someone that is unable to make a decision because of an impairment or disturbance in the functioning of their mind or brain, and as a result of that, they are unable to understand information, retain information, use or weigh up information, or communicate their decisions. Now, all these things are in the Mental Capacity Act 2005. Now, the third question, by the way, for this interview, there were just 2 people and they asked 6 questions in total. One person asked 3, the other asked the other 3. So the third question was, what are the pros and cons of multi-agency working, and what skills do you need for effective multi-agency working? I first started by saying that all my work experience has involved multi-agency working, and because I've worked with various professionals, I gave examples of a case that involved a lot of professionals, like both a community outreach worker, a mental health therapist, housing officer. Then I tied this up together, stating our roles and what we're able to do. The pros of that is the fact that we're all able to draw from our wealth of knowledge, and the con of the multi-agency working is the fact that there could be a time, for instance, in my case, there was challenge on the time scales of support. So the mental health therapist wanted the therapeutic intervention to come first, the housing officer wanted temporary accommodation to come first, the community outreach worker wanted an intervention to come first. So it was just a lot. But as a social worker, I chaired the meeting, I acted as the client's advocate, and we were able to have a phased support plan, prioritizing what was more important to the client at the particular time. Now, for this case, the important thing for the client was ensuring that their housing needs were sorted out, and we did that. We provided temporary accommodation before the other interventions. So they were like very good example. Now, I'm talking about these pros and cons of multi-agency working. Let me elaborate on some points. So for the pros, I literally talked about holistic support for the client, and that is the fact that different professionals are coming together. We are pulling from our wealth of knowledge, and that ends up giving the client a holistic support, which is good. Now, another pro you can say is the fact that there is shared responsibility. Since all the professionals will be supporting the client, we all have that collective responsibility, which is quite positive. Also, you can talk about improved decision making, because the fact that it's not just one person making the decisions, it will be a positive thing that we are all able to collaborate and be creative in how we're going to be supporting the client. So those are extra pros that I've just given you. Now for cons, apart from different perspectives and opinions of professionals like I mentioned, another con can be communication barriers, because as a social worker, we are working from the social perspective. A medical practitioner, for instance, we're working from a medical perspective, and to bridge that communication gap, as a social worker, I was able to use non-technical terms or non-technical jargons to make everything I was saying understandable to everyone, and this influenced other professionals to reduce their use of jargons. By the way, jargons does not mean rubbish. It actually means like the kind of technical terms you would use relating to a profession. Now, in terms of communication barrier, you can also talk about the fact that we all had different recording system and that posed a difficulty. But to solve that problem, I was able to create a shared document that was easily accessible by everyone. Now, as you can notice, when I'm talking, I'm not just listing out the problems. I'm saying how me as a social worker, I am doing something. You can also talk about a con of availability. The fact that, of course, we are dealing with different professionals with their different time frames. So time constraint was an issue. And I was able to solve that by being flexible and also being considerate of every other professional's calendar, such that the meetings were effectively scheduled. Now, those are, I think I've given you enough points in terms of the pros and cons of multi-agency working. It most likely would come out as a question in your social work interview, and you don't even have to give all these examples. One or two is enough. And if you're not subscribed to my channel by now, hey. Now the first question, by the way, if you're enjoying this video, I need a thumbs up, please. So now the first question is, what is your understanding of making... Oh, I didn't finish the third question. They didn't just ask about the pros and cons of multi-agency working, they asked for the skills needed. What skills do I have to aid multi-agency working? I talked about my skill of prioritization, which makes me able to manage risk because I know what should come first. I talked about my active listening skills, my interpersonal communication skill, my ability to hold the room. I talked about my aura, and I said that I have a very calming energy and I'm able to diffuse tensions, which was what happened in the case that I cited. That's what I said. So now the fourth question, what is your understanding of making safeguarding personal? So I told them that I understand that to mean that the client should be placed at the center of their decision making. There should be their freedom of choice, there should be autonomy, there should be their independence being maximized and explored. I talked about the 5 principles of safeguarding: empowerment, prevention, protection, proportionality, partnership, and accountability. I explained that. So the fifth question was, what qualities do you have that will make you a good team member, and how have you helped a team member in your previous position? Now, I said the first thing I would do is to be proactive and actually do my job. And people just started laughing. They were like, that is very underrated. Like, people don't do their jobs. And I was like, yeah, because there is no reason why I'll be employed to have a job and I will not do that job. So one major skill that will make me a good team player is my ability to do my job, because when one person doesn't do their job, it impacts the whole team, and I'm knowledgeable about that. I talked about my problem solving skills, my organizational skills, attention to detail, empathy. By the way, I didn't just list these things, so like I explained, because one thing about these social work interviews, be talking and you would know if you're making sense. Like, there is no confusion. If you are not making sense, you will know, because if you're not making so much sense, they'll just be looking at you. When you're making sense and you're hitting their point, you see them writing or marking. That's to tell you that okay, you're doing well. And that was what was happening. And I gave an example of something that happened at work, my current job, where I was able to support a co-worker, and I emphasized on my empathetic skills in that regard. Now the sixth question is, what case have you worked on that did not go as well? Now, I talked about a data breach that happened when I was on placement. Now, let me explain. In this question, if they ask you, don't say something that is too bad, but don't act like you are perfect. Say something that happened in your past, and don't just say what happened. No, say what happened, say the outcome, say what you learned from it, and if possible, draw up an example showing how you were able to practicalize what you've learned. Because for me, I talked about how I breached data and I explained what happened. I talked about the context. And I talked about what happened in future, because in future there was an incident, but because of my knowledge about the Data Protection Act, I did not make that mistake. And they were like, wow, they loved my example. In fact, the interviewer gave me an example of how she mistakenly sent an email to a wrong person. So her best friend and her manager has the same name, and she mistakenly sent a message to her manager talking about her manager, thinking she was sending it to her best friend. So they actually liked my example. Then the last question is, do you have any question for us? So I asked them 4 questions. The first was about career progression. They explained that to me. The second was, is there anything in the interview that you feel I should have talked more on? And the reason I asked this question was because for the first question, I feel like I was a little bit nervous and I don't do in my mind I could have done better. But asking this question was for them to tell me, okay, this, so that I can talk more. But surprisingly, they were like, no, you've actually answered every single thing very well. We don't have any concerns. Okay. Then the third question I asked was, what was it in my CV that made you call me for the job? This question is a confidence booster because they will tell you good things about yourself. And you know, when they're telling you good things about yourself, they're indirectly reminding themselves good things about you. Like, they said lots of amazing things. They were like, the fact that I have a limited amount of experience and I still have a varied amount of experience was very interesting. So I have 0 experience as a newly qualified social worker because I'm newly qualified, but I have 2+ years experience in the UK in the health and social care industry. So they found that very admirable and they're able to say nice things about me, which was a good one. Then finally, of course, if you know me, you will do my cheeky question. I was like, so when are you congratulating me? They were just laughing, like it cracked them up. I was like, yes. I'm like, cause don't call me to say unfortunately. They were just laughing. They were like, no, okay. But they are not done with the interview round and they are not allowed to give an offer without being done with all the interview rounds. And so that would happen next week. So fingers crossed, and I wish myself the very best. I hope you've learned 1 or 2 things from these. All right, my loves. Now, if you're struggling to land your dream job, I have a course for you. My Land Your Dream Job course has launched, and you can click the link in the description box to purchase. You do not want to miss that course, trust me. Because for this month, the bonus that course will give you, chef kiss. I'm going to be linking part 1 of this interview series. In case you've not watched it before, go and watch it. And I'm going to see my besties in the next one. If there are any questions, put it in the comment section and I'll be sure to respond. So until my next one, stay blessed, remain happy, and I'm so tired. I need to rest.